As just introduced, I'm Tess, and my title is The Confines of Expectation. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, the first woman opened a box. She had been given it by Zeus himself. What was inside it, she didn't know. The only thing she had been told was not to open it. But as curiosity got the better of her, she lifted the lid, and all manner of misery and evil flew out into the world. Then, as she closed the lid, only hope remained. That, as I'm sure many of you know, is the story of Pandora's box. And as we've all heard, Pandora was responsible for letting all evil out into the world, right? Well, it's actually not that simple. Like so much of mythology, the nuance of Pandora's box has been eroded over time. Ask an ancient Greek, and they might have told you the box was Prometheus's fault. It was his thievery of fire that started the whole business. Ask a person in medieval Europe, and they're equally likely to blame Epimetheus, Pandora's husband. And yet time and time again, we retell this version, where it is Pandora alone who shoulders the blame. Why? Well, for the astute of you among the audience, we might see some similarities to an equally famous first woman, who fell to temptation, and in doing so, doomed the human race. And if the parallels between Eve and Pandora seem almost too close to be true, well, that's because they are. Over time, we have allowed our biases to warp the classical story of Pandora to fit our Christian expectations, and in doing so, ignore the nuance and interest the Greeks might have seen. But it's one thing to misinterpret an ancient text. I mean, sure, the implications aren't great, but it's not the end of the world, right? But this doesn't just stop in ancient history. We are constantly reinterpreting and reframing the past to fit what we expect to have happened. And in doing so, we don't only change how we view history, but how we view the present. Confirmation bias is the tendency to interpret new evidence as affirmation of our existing beliefs. And if you look at history, we do it all the time. How can we know what we might be? We don't even know what we were. Just take the suffragettes. If we think of a suffragette, we might imagine them marching, chanting votes for women, and maybe smashing a window or two. In reality, the suffragettes ran one of the most wide-reaching campaigns of domestic terrorism in British history. And yet, if we imagine Edwardian women, we picture genteel ladies sipping cups of tea, or maybe a downtrodden factory girl, and we twist the suffragettes to fit this image. But women are far more violent than we give them credit for. But the suffragettes, the suffragettes resorted to incredibly extreme tactics, from setting bombs in packed theatres to even throwing axes at the Prime Minister. Yet we cleanse these inconsistencies of violence from our history books, choosing to remember the cause we agree with over the methods we don't. And this doesn't just stop with a historical filter. To ensure history fits what we expect to have happened, we can interpret new evidence to the point where we're actually factually wrong. For the past 100 years, we felt safe in the assumption that the grave of a Viking warrior was a man, simply due to the quantity of weapons buried with them. But in 2017, however, we used new DNA technology to reanalyze the grave of a Viking warrior and found, to our surprise, they were in fact a woman. And yet it gets worse. In the 1900s, European anthropologists discovered incredible bronze statues in Ife, the ancient Yoruba city in Nigeria. And they concluded they couldn't possibly have been made by the local population. Instead, the more logical answer was believed to be that a group of white Europeans traveled to West Africa, made these statues, and then disappeared without a trace. Whilst fortunately not a credited idea anymore, this plainly ridiculous theory illustrates just how far we are willing to go to ensure history aligns with our expectations. By projecting our biases and misconceptions on the past, we don't only comment on their society, but on ours. Of course, people in the past, of different cultures, eras, philosophies, thought exactly the same as we do, we say, because we cannot imagine thinking any differently. So I ask you today, why limit ourselves? Because truly, this speech isn't about history, but about humanity. By confining the past to our expectations, we limit our future, never allowing us to see a society different than the one before us. We can, never allowing us to see a society different than the one before us. But as we have made these limitations, we too can unmake them, but only if we are brave enough to release ourselves from the confines of expectation. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Once again, it's question time. There's a hand right next to me.
Sorry, I know you said amazing speech. I loved it. I know you said that the speech is about humanity, not history. But talking about history, I immediately thought of the question that those who don't know the history are doomed to repeat it. We don't know ours, so what do you think is the consequence that will, happen for us, that is awaiting for us? Thank you.
The takeaway I'd like people to take from my speech is the idea that if we change history, or if we omit parts of history, then we change how we view the past. And by changing how we view the past, we change how we view how society can be. Okay? So if we omit parts of the past, especially parts of the past that don't agree with our worldview and how we want to see the world, then we don't imagine a world that can be different to the one we see now. For example, I think standing here, a very relevant example would be in Britain. We have a very complicated relationship with our past, and for instance, the British Empire. And by not acknowledging the issues of our history, we don't imagine a society where we can move on from it. Instead, we remain trapped in parts of our history without ever really acknowledging them. Thank you.
Over here, there's a hand on this side, just down here. See.
William Faulkner famously said that the past is never dead, it's not even past. Do you think it's sort of the modern relevance of the past which causes people to warp it to fit what they think it should be?
Absolutely, and I hope that was clear with my examples about suffragettes. When we think of women today, we imagine them as intrinsically less violent than men. And when we think of violent political movements, we don't imagine women leading them. And whether or not we agree with them, and I think oftentimes with the suffragettes we don't agree with the things we do, it's important to recognize that everyone in society is capable of that. And that it's not women are no less intrinsically capable of committing political violence than men. The past is very much ongoing. What we talk about today will be history tomorrow. But in order to ensure that we look at what everyone is capable of, we have to make sure that our preconceptions about the past, and by reflection, our preconceptions about the present, are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions for Tess? Just here.
I loved your speech, completely agree with it. I just have a question. So you said that what's happening now is going to be history tomorrow. So I'm just curious to know, how do you think these preconceptions that we have are going to evolve to the way that we see our own history right now different? Like, in the future, in 50 years, how is 2025 going to be seen, in your opinion?
I think that all depends in 50 years who you ask. When it comes to history, we are inherently selective because everything happens all the time, and we can't talk about all of it all at once because that would be entirely unrealistic. When you talk about 2025, you could talk about all sorts of things that happen. You could talk about the impact of COVID. You could talk about political things, social things, all those changes, things that we don't see today but were very obvious tomorrow. And so I think the important thing to think about in context to how people in the future will use their preconceptions to view the present is that we are guardians of our own history. And the things we write, and the things we create, and the things we say to each other are how the future is able to interpret us. It is only through different written interpretations of Pandora's box that we're able to appreciate the Greeks didn't have just one idea. They had lots of them. And so the most important thing is to make sure that everybody has access to making the history we view tomorrow, to doing things like writing things and saying things and reading things, to make sure that our history in the future is as multifaceted as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give it up for Tess.
Thank you.